Quadruped single leg press is a variation that is not necessarily in the original Pilates repertoire, but one that we use quite a bit and is a great exercise for working hip extension and hip stability, as well as core control and trunk stability while removing the lower extremities in a quadruped position. For springs for our quadruped work, again, we're usually going to be on about one spring. That could be anywhere from a yellow to a blue to red to green, just depending on what you're working with. So similarly to a lot of things that we do on the reformer, the heavier you get, you're going to have heavier spring tension to push against with the leg muscles. That also means that the trunk and the standing hip are going to have to work a little bit harder because they've got more force coming into them. But on the flip side of that, when we work on light springs with this exercise, the carriage moves a lot more. There's a lot more control involved. So it really just depends on what your purpose is for this exercise in your class flow. All right, I am working on a blue spring right now, which is on the lighter end. And we're just going to climb onto the carriage in a quadruped position. This time with the hands around the shoulder blocks. So if you just make an L with your hands, you can slide that right around. And then we want to scooch the knees out from under us enough that they are directly under your hips. So making sure that the knees are not too far back or too far forward, but in our true quadruped. From here, we lift one ball of the foot up onto the foot bar, which will lift the knee off the carriage and re-square off your weight back to center. Once you've got that there, you can exhale and push the carriage out, extending through the leg, and then you bring the carriage back in with control. For variations here, similarly to footwork, we can change the foot position. So we can turn the heel in and the toes out, turning the knee out to be in more of a frog, external rotation position here. We could have the heel on the foot bar instead of the ball of the foot, which may give a little bit more connection in with the glute for people. We could even take the foot out really wide and try a press from there. And then there are also ways that you can start to rotate the upper body and the chest. So we can bring a forearm down to the shoulder blocks and then have the leg turned out where we've got the pelvis open. And you can really get creative with these variations and start to play and change and adapt. We can even lift up an opposite arm for a bird dog variation here. So lots of options to add play and challenge and work the body in different ways. Okay. So for common problems, the first one we see is that sometimes people's brains just cannot figure out which knee is supposed to be off the carriage. So you'll go to cue foot on the foot bar. Sometimes if people have a long enough leg, they'll be able to get their foot up there without lifting the knee. And then you say push the carriage out, and all of a sudden they're very confused. So cueing that knee lift off the carriage, keep your weight in one knee as you press out, can be really helpful. And you just have to keep an eye on people and sometimes help them get into that. You'll see them like try to pick up the opposite knee and then push out. I've seen all kinds of things with this one. Our modifications here are similar to most of our quadruped stuff. A lot of times this is a lot of pressure on people's wrists. A great option is to bring your short box onto the actual carriage and just be on your forearms with the knees down on the carriage. You can do all of the variations there. I quite like that variation option. For some people, it can be helpful just to bring their hands up onto the shoulder box instead of all the way down. And you can work this on the forearms down on the mat. This is going to change the angle a little bit where the shoulders are lower than the pelvis, which changes the way that we're working the core. This can be an option though for people if you don't have the boxes out and they want to get off the wrists, or you can just use this as a way to kind of dynamically change up the exercise and work things in a little bit of a different way.